Hari Om, we're back with another story, and this story is another story from the Chandogya Upanishad. And we have been seeing how in all the Upanishads it is always a dialogue, at least most of the times, it's a dialogue between a teacher and a student. And we have seen the varieties in this combination, right? It could be husband and wife, it could be brothers, it could be two arch rivals like Indra and Virochana, it could be mother and child, it could be the Lord of Death and a young boy. So, there are many possibilities. It does not matter who the guru or who the shishya is many times. What is important for us is the message that is given through this dialogue. So today's story is an interesting combination of guru and shishya. Let us see what the story is all about. Once, a young boy, Upakosala, Kamalayana. Upakosala was his name, Kamalayana was his lineage. His father was Kamalayana. So, Upakosala had spent 12 years in the ashram of Satyakama Jabala, and he was a very devoted student and very sincere in whatever he did. And the speciality was this young boy, Upakosala, respected and protected the fires, the sacrificial fires in the ashram. And a certain kind of bond had built between him and this fire. Now it was time for the graduation ceremony. All the students who had joined the ashram and were ready for graduation, they were all given the Upadesha by the Acharya, and they were ready to go on with their lives. But somehow the Acharya seemed to have deliberately left out Upakosala, and Upakosala could not understand as to why, because as far as he knew, he was no different from the other disciples. He had done as well as the others, he was as sincere as the others, but then he didn't ask the Acharya. He normally, it's always that the guru knows best. But he couldn't deny that he was sad about it. In fact, the Acharya's Patni, Guru Patni, also asked the Acharya as to why he had done that. But the Acharya completely ignored his wife's question too. And it so happened that the following day, the Acharya had to go out on some work, and on that day, when the Guru Patni was all set to serve food for all the people in the ashram, Upakosala did not come for food that day. She asked him, "What is it? What is the matter? Why don't you come and eat?" He said, "No, my mind is just too sad to eat anything." And he sat next to the sacrificial fire, next to the Agni, the divine flames, the divine fire. And the fire would always be kept burning in those days because the fire was respected and everything happened in its presence. It was like fire is the witness for everything, and it's a sacrificial fire, and constantly homas would go on in ashrams, and also of course for the kitchen purposes also. So Agni was always alive in the ashrams. And we saw earlier also how this young boy had already developed a sort of bonding with the Agni, and he himself wasn't really aware of it, but he felt comforted when he went and sat next to the fire. So in that unhappy state of mind, he was sitting next to the sacrificial fire. Now this Agni which was next to him, as though suddenly came to life, and Upakosala heard a voice from the Agni, and Agni told him, "My boy, dear Upakosala, we will give you the Upadesha." And what was the Upadesha that the Agni Devata gave him? So the Agni Devata said, "Dear Upakosala, understand that this very life is Brahman. The Akasha, the space in which everything seems to exist, is none other than the Brahman. Understand that Brahman is Ananda, Brahman is bliss. Know that this Brahman is the space in the heart where we meditate upon the divine. This earth, the fire, the sun, the food, they are all Brahman alone. They are all different forms of the Brahman alone. These are what you worship, isn't it? What you have been worshipping all this while is the Brahman and Brahman alone. The Purusha who is seen in Surya, in the sun, in the Dik or the cardinal points, in Shashi or the moon, in the stars, in the lightning, I am verily that Purusha. And the rest, my boy, your Acharya will teach you." So said Agni and became quiet. Now Upakosala suddenly felt transformed. He meditated upon all this. He went into the deep thought of all that he has been worshipping now being revealed as the Brahman, and he went into that quiet thought process, and the thoughts also subsided, and he was in a sort of transformative state, a trance-like state, and everything around him seemed to be just so divine. The fire was no more just that material fire like the Panchabhuta fire. No, it was a God, it was a deity, it was divine. The earth, the food, everything had transformed into divinity. It was no more the material ones that he had interacted with. Everything was just so divine. In fact, life itself had manifested as just divinity. And their real nature, the real nature of all of this, was revealed to him as Brahman. Now, at one point, Acharya returned. And when the Acharya came to see Upakosala, he was in for a surprise. He looked at the young boy and he said, "My boy, what brilliance! This is the brilliance of someone who has known the Brahman. Who taught you this?" And Upakosala was like, he just looked at the Agni and said, "Bhagwan, Acharya, Agni, this Agni did not look like this, what you are seeing now. A few moments ago, Agni looked very different. Agni was divine, Agni was like a god. And indeed, it is this Agni that gave me the Upadesha." And the Acharya asked, "What did Agni tell you? What is the Upadesha that the Agni gave you?" And Upakosala told all that was told to him. And the Acharya said, "Dear child, come. Now I will reveal to you beyond what Agni has instructed you." The Acharya went on to instruct Upakosala on this. Profound knowledge took him within, from outer, he took him within and helped him recognize that everything that he is perceiving is none other than the Brahman. And I am sure, although the Upanishad doesn't specifically say that this young boy Upakosala attained self-realization, but it is obvious that when this much knowledge has been gained, I'm sure the boy went ahead to realize that he himself is verily the Brahman, and whatever is being perceived, including his own body, his mind, his thoughts, that individuality that he thought that he is Upakosala, everything is revealed as Brahman and Brahman alone, that there is nothing other than the Brahman, and I am verily this Brahman. This story has the student as a young brahmachari, but the guru is a combination of the Agni. And why had that Agni manifested as a guru for this young boy? It is simply because he had so much respect and reverence for that Agni. Brahmavidya can take the form of anything, anyone, and come to the student. We saw in the Upanishad that the Brahmavidya came as a deity, as Uma. And we see how Brahmavidya has come through various acharyas of different kinds. It could be in a husband and wife relationship, it could be in a father and son relationship, it could be simply a god such as Lord Yama and that young boy. And why not as Agni and the Brahmachari, Upakosala? So, may this story inspire all of us to develop that bonding with the divine, for that is what will take us to the highest knowledge, the very purpose of this human life. That bonding with the divine will indeed remove all the bondage that we feel that we are stuck in and take us to what is called liberation or moksha. Until we meet again for another story from an Upanishad, Hari Om.